He lived a quiet life in a small town. It's the kind of place where everyone knew each other, but no one really knew each other's deepest thoughts. His days were predictable: work at the office, a quick walk home, an evening spent with a book or some music. Nothing extraordinary ever happened, and he liked it that way. Life was simple, and he had grown comfortable in its simplicity. One evening, as he walked past a tiny, dimly lit shop he had passed 100 times before, he heard a melody that stopped him in his tracks. It was soft, almost fragile, drifting from an old radio in the corner of the store. He didn't know why, but it felt as if the notes were calling to him directly. The melody was familiar yet strange, as though he had heard it somewhere long ago but couldn't quite remember where. He stayed outside the shop for a moment, letting the music reach him, before finally moving on with a lingering sense of unease. That night, the melody did not leave him. It echoed in his mind as he tried to sleep, repeating over and over. It was not just a tune. It carried an emotion, a subtle sadness, and longing that he couldn't place. He kept thinking about where he might have heard it before, and why it felt so personal. By morning, the memory of the song was already starting to shape the day, making him restless and distracted at work. He would catch himself staring at nothing, humming the tune without realizing it. Days went by, and the melody appeared again in the most unexpected places. At the coffee shop, the barista hummed it while preparing his drink. On the bus, a street musician played a variation of it on a worn guitar. Even in his dreams, the tune returned, now clearer and more insistent. It seemed to demand attention, as if it were guiding him towards something he had forgotten. He began to wonder if it was just coincidence, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Curiosity gnawed at him, pushing him to explore the source of the melody. He started visiting old shops and markets, looking for anything that might be connected. He asked questions casually, hoping someone would mention the tune. People would smile politely or shake their heads, but no one seemed to recognize it in the same way he did. The more he searched, the more he realized that the melody was linked to his own memory, something personal that others could not recall. One afternoon, he went to a small record store he had never noticed before. The walls were lined with old vinyl records, some dusty, some vibrant with color. He wandered through the aisles, letting his fingers brush against the covers, till he found a record that made his heart skip. The cover was faded, the image almost unrecognizable, but the title was the same as the melody he had been chasing. He picked it up carefully, as if handling something fragile. The shopkeeper noticed his interest and smiled. "That's an old one," the shopkeeper said. "Not many people remember it anymore." He nodded, unable to speak at first. He put the record on the small turntable in the corner of the store, and the music began to play. The melody filled the room, warm and haunting, and for a moment, he felt like a child again, standing in a sunlit room with a sense of wonder and fear all at once. It was familiar in a way he could not explain, touching a part of him that he had long ignored. Tears pricked his eyes as memories he couldn't yet name began to stir. Over the next few days, he became obsessed with the melody. He played the record repeatedly, taking notes on every detail, every note that felt different or significant. He began writing down fragments of memories that surfaced, faces he couldn't fully recall, places he had never consciously visited, emotions that seemed too intense for ordinary life. The more he listened, the more he realized that the melody was a key to something hidden, something he had forgotten or never known. It was like a map, leading him through his own past. His friends noticed the change in him. He was quieter, more withdrawn, often lost in thought. When they asked about it, he would smile faintly and say it was nothing but inside. He was becoming more aware that his life had layers he had never peeled back. The melody was not just music. It was a doorway, and he could not stop himself from stepping closer. One evening, he visited his parents' home, a place he had always considered ordinary, filled with familiar sights and smells. He wandered through the rooms, humming the melody softly, when he noticed a small, locked box tucked away in a corner of the attic. He had never seen it before, though he had spent years in this house. His curiosity flared. He brought it down carefully and examined it, searching for clues to open it. There was no key, no obvious way to unlock it, but something about the box resonated with the melody in his mind. It was as if the music itself was urging him to find what lay inside, for nights. He lay awake thinking about the box and the melody. He could not understand why the combination of the two created such a strong emotion in him. It was as if his entire life had been waiting for this moment, a moment when something buried would finally rise to the surface. He began to research, calling old friends and distant relatives, trying to piece together fragments of his history. Each conversation brought small clues, subtle hints that something important had been kept from him, though no one could explain exactly what. Then one afternoon, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. While talking to a family friend, he mentioned the melody almost casually. The friend froze, her eyes widening as she leaned closer. "That song? I haven't heard that in years," she said softly. It reminds me of someone we thought we had lost." The words hit him like a shockwave. Something in his past, something significant, had been hidden. The melody was not just music. It was a link to a secret, a memory, a truth that had been carefully buried. He felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The realization that his understanding of his life was about to change. He spent the next few days retracing his steps, revisiting old places and following leads that seemed almost too subtle to notice. Each discovery brought more questions than answers. Yet through it all, the melody played in his mind, guiding him, urging him to keep moving forward. It was no longer just a song it was a companion, a guide, and perhaps even a warning. One rainy evening, he returned to the small shop where he first heard the melody. The shop was empty, the radio silent. He stood there, listening to the sound of raindrops against the window, feeling the weight of what he had discovered and the pull of what remained hidden. The melody had led him here, and he knew that it would lead him further still, deeper into memories, secrets, and truths he had never imagined. It had awakened something within him, a sense that life, as he knew it, was about to shift forever. That night, as he lay in bed, the melody returned one last time before sleep took him. It was no longer haunting or elusive. It was insistent, demanding, a signal that the journey had begun. He closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of dread and anticipation. Something important was waiting for him, something that would change the way he saw himself, his family, and the life he thought he understood. The ordinary life he had once known was over, and the melody had opened the door to a secret that would alter everything. Days passed since he first discovered the old record in the shop. The melody continued to haunt him. It was no longer just a tune. It had become a thread weaving through his memories, pulling fragments from places he could not fully see. He would sit for hours, closing his eyes, letting the music guide him, and slowly images began to form. Faces appeared, blurred and shadowed, smiles he could almost remember. Moments of laughter that belonged to someone else, but felt deeply familiar. He realized that the melody was unlocking. Memories he had long forgotten, or perhaps memories he had never truly known. He started visiting old family photo albums, flipping through yellowed pages, tracing faces with his fingers, hoping that something would match the scenes playing in his mind. Some images stirred a vague sense of recognition, others a quiet sadness he could not name. Each photograph seemed to whisper secrets, and he felt closer to understanding something important about his past. At work, his mind often wandered. Tasks that once felt routine now seemed trivial compared to the questions swirling in his head. He would catch himself staring at a coworker's smile, wondering why it felt familiar, or pausing at a word someone said, feeling that it had a hidden meaning. People began to notice the change in him. Some asked if he was all right, and he would nod, but he knew he could not explain what was happening. No one would understand. The melody was unlocking truths that only he could follow. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old storage closet at home, he stumbled upon a dusty box he had never noticed before. It was not the box from the attic. This one was smaller, unassuming, but somehow it felt important. Inside, he found old letters tied with a ribbon, yellowed with age. He opened them carefully, reading words that seemed alive, written in a hand he recognized, but could not place immediately. The letters spoke of things never mentioned, decisions made, and feelings kept secret. The melody came to his mind again, soft and persistent, as if urging him to understand. He began piecing together small clues from the letters, connecting them with the fragments the melody had brought back. Patterns merged, people, places, and events that had seemed unrelated were part of a larger story. He realized that his family's history was more complex than he had ever imagined, full of choices made in silence and truths left unspoken. Each revelation brought a mixture of awe and discomfort, a sense that the world thought he knew was only a small piece of a bigger reality. He tried to talk to his parents about what he was discovering. He mentioned the melody, the letters, the fragments of memories, and hoped for clarity. But their reactions were cautious, measured. They smiled faintly, offered reassurances, but avoided giving concrete answers. Their eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of unease. He could feel that they knew more than they were saying, that the past held secrets they were not ready to share. This only fueled his determination. He could not stop until he uncovered the truth. Late at night, he would wander through his old neighborhood, the melody guiding his steps. Each familiar street corner seemed to hold a memory, each building a story. Sometimes he would see someone in the distance. A shadow of recognition in their face, and a flicker of something remembered would pass through him. The town itself began to feel different, charged with hidden meaning, as if it were a living map of memories waiting to be explored. One day, while speaking with an old neighbor, he learned something that startled him. The neighbor mentioned a person who had been close to his family, but had disappeared suddenly years ago. They spoke with hesitation, as if fearing the consequences of revealing too much. He listened carefully, realizing that this person might be connected to the melody, that the tune he had been chasing could have originated from someone long gone. This revelation deepened the mystery and made him more determined to follow the thread wherever it led. He spent hours at local archives, digging through old newspapers and public records. He found small mentions of events, names that resonated with the letters and fragments of memory. Each piece of information was like a brushstroke on a larger canvas, slowly forming a picture he was only beginning to understand. He felt the thrill of discovery mixed with the weight of responsibility, knowing that the truth might change his understanding of everything he had believed as he continued his investigation. The melody became more vivid in his mind. He could hum it perfectly, every note exact, yet it always carried a new emotion each time he listened. Sometimes it was sorrow, sometimes hope, sometimes longing. It was as if the melody itself were alive, reacting to his discoveries, guiding him through the maze of memory and truth. He began recording the tune, writing it down, trying to capture every detail, fearing that if he stopped, the connection might disappear. The process took a toll on him. Friends noticed his obsession and expressed concern. He would assure them he was fine, but inside he felt both exhilarated and terrified. He was walking a line between discovery and revelation, uncovering truths that could not be undone. The melody had become a companion, a guide, and a warning, and he knew that the next step could alter everything. One evening, he received a call from a distant relative he had not spoken to in years. The relative spoke cautiously, almost in whispers, about the past and hinted at events that had been kept secret. They mentioned the melody specifically, saying that it had always been tied to a truth that was difficult to face. The conversation left him both shaken and determined. He realized that he could no longer avoid confronting the past directly. The secrets were waiting, and the melody had led him this far. Over the next few days, he prepared himself for what he knew would be an emotional journey. He gathered letters, photographs, and notes, creating a small archive of clues and memories. Each night, he would play the melody, letting it guide his thoughts and emotions. Connecting the fragments into a coherent story, the past was no longer a vague shadow. It was taking shape, revealing patterns and connections that had been hidden for years. Then, one afternoon, he made a discovery that sent shivers through him. Hidden among the letters was a photograph he had never seen, showing a gathering of people he vaguely recognized. In the center stood someone whose presence seemed impossible, a person he had only heard of in whispers and hints. Someone whose life had intersected with his family in ways he could not yet comprehend. The melody seemed to swell in his mind as he stared at the photo. The connection between the music and the image undeniable. He realized that the melody was not just a key to memory, but a key to understanding the truth about his family his past, and himself. It had awakened something long buried, something that had shaped his life without his knowledge. The sense of urgency grew. He had to uncover the full story, no matter how difficult or painful it might be. The pieces were coming together, and he could feel the moment approaching when the secret would finally reveal itself. As night fell, he sat by the window, the melody playing softly in his mind. He reflected on the journey so far, the fragments of memory, the letters, the photographs, and the conversations. He realized that he had grown, that his perception of life, family, and identity was expanding. The melody had led him here, and he knew that the next steps would bring clarity and perhaps closure. Yet there was also fear, for he sensed that the truth might be far more complicated than he imagined. In the quiet of the night, he felt a mixture of hope and dread. The melody had unlocked the door to his past, and he could not ignore the pull any longer. He understood that he was standing on the edge of a revelation, one that would change the way he saw everything. The journey was far from over, but he was ready to follow the melody wherever it led. Knowing that the secrets waiting on the other side would shape the rest of his life, the days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of anticipation and unease. The melody had become more than just a memory trigger. It had transformed into a guide, leading him deeper into the hidden parts of his life. Each note seemed to carry a message, a subtle hint that pointed him toward truths he had avoided for years. He spent long hours piecing together information from letters, photographs, and conversations, trying to form a picture of the past that had been obscured by time and secrecy. One evening, he found himself standing outside a house he had never paid much attention to before. It was an old, weathered building at the edge of town, with a garden overgrown with weeds. Something about it felt familiar, though he could not immediately explain why. The melody played softly in his mind, each note resonating with a memory he could not yet name. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. Inside the house, dust motes floated in the air, illuminated by the fading light from the windows. He walked slowly, carefully examining the rooms. Old furniture sat covered with sheets, and stacks of papers and photographs were scattered across tables. As he moved through the house, the memories began to return more vividly. He saw glimpses of people, conversations, and moments of emotion he had long forgotten. It was as if the house itself held the echoes of the past, waiting for him to uncover them. In a small room at the back, he found a trunk tucked away in the corner. The trunk was heavy, locked with a simple clasp, but it seemed to call to him. He opened it carefully, revealing a collection of letters, journals, and photographs. The items inside were delicate, almost fragile, but each one told a story. As he sifted through them, he realized that they belonged to someone who had played a crucial role in his family's history, someone whose presence had been hidden or forgotten. Among the papers, he discovered a journal. Its pages were filled with detailed accounts of events that had shaped his family, written in a hand that conveyed both care and emotion. He read about moments of love, sacrifice, mistakes, and regrets. The more he read, the more he understood the depth of the secrets that had been kept. The melody came to his mind again, and this time it felt like a voice, guiding him through the words, helping him to see the connections between the past and the present. The journal revealed that his family had faced challenges and decisions that were never spoken of openly. Choices had been made to protect one another, to keep certain truths from causing pain, but those choices had also created a distance, sense of mystery that lingered for years. He began to see how the melody had been a part of this hidden history, a symbol of emotions and events that had shaped lives silently in a vessel. As he continued reading, he encountered references to a person who had left a profound impact on the family. The journal spoke of their influence, their actions, and the way their absence had altered the course of events. The more he learned, the clearer it became that this person was connected to the melody, that the song he had been hearing was a link to their presence and the choices they had made. The realization was both shocking and enlightening, as it tied together the fragments of memory and curiosity that had driven him for weeks. He felt a surge of emotion, a mix of sadness and understanding. The truth was not easy to accept. It revealed mistakes, losses, and hidden pains that had shaped his life indirectly. Yet there was also clarity, a sense of knowing that had been absent before. He understood that the melody had been a bridge between past and present, a guide that allowed him to confront what had been hidden, to see the full picture for the first time, determined to learn more. He reached out to the distant relative he had spoken to before. They met in a quiet cafe, and the conversation was cautious at first. But as he shared what he had discovered in the journal and the letters, the relative began to open up. They spoke of events long kept secret, of decisions made in moments of fear and hope, and of the impact those decisions had on the family and on the person he had become. Each revelation added depth and complexity to the story, filling in gaps and confirming suspicions. He listened intently, absorbing the details and connecting them to the fragments he had gathered. The melody played in his mind as he processed the information, each note highlighting the significance of what he was learning. He realized that the secrets were not meant to harm him. They had been kept to protect, to shield, and yet, in their concealment, they had created a puzzle that he was now piecing together. The truth was both painful and liberating, and he felt a weight lifting as understanding grew. The next few days were a whirlwind of discovery. He visited old friends, neighbors, and colleagues, asking questions carefully, trying to confirm details without causing alarm. Each interaction brought more pieces of the story into focus. He learned about moments of courage and fear, of love and loss, that had been quietly shaping lives behind the scenes. The melody remained a constant companion, echoing in his mind as he walked, wrote notes, and reflected on the revelations. One evening, he returned to the small shop where the journey had begun. The shopkeeper greeted him warmly, noticing the intensity in his eyes. He played the record again, letting the melody fill the space. For the first time, he felt a sense of completion in the music, a connection that went beyond curiosity or memory. It was a thread linking him to the past, guiding him through the truth, and helping him to understand the emotions and choices that had been hidden for so long. The realization hit him that the melody had been more than a simple song. It was a marker of a life, a symbol of the connections and secrets that defined his family. The song had altered his perception, awakened memories, and opened doors that had been closed for decades. He felt a profound gratitude for the guidance it had provided. Even as he understood the complexity and the pain of the truths it revealed, he spent nights reflecting on the discoveries, playing the melody quietly and thinking about the people who had shaped his life in ways he had never realized. He considered the choices they had made, the sacrifices, and the hidden stories. The past was no longer distant. It was present in every note, every memory, and every piece of information he had uncovered. He felt a deep connection to the people who had come before him, understanding that their lives had influenced his in ways that were subtle, powerful, and sometimes difficult to face. In time, he realized that the journey was not just about uncovering the past. It was about understanding himself. The melody had led him to confront emotions, memories, and truths that he had avoided. It had challenged him to see the complexity of life, to embrace the beauty and pain that coexist, and to recognize the influence of choices made in love, fear, and hope. He felt a sense of transformation, knowing that the knowledge he had gained would shape his perspective and actions going forward. As part 3 of his journey concluded, he felt prepared for the next stage. The secrets had begun to reveal themselves. And while there was still much to understand, he had found a foundation of clarity and awareness. The melody had guided him to a deeper understanding of his family, his history, and himself. It had illuminated hidden paths and connected him to truths that were both profound and transformative. He knew that the following steps would require courage and reflection, but he was ready to face them. Knowing that the journey of discovery had already changed his life in meaningful ways, the revelations from the past weighed heavily on him, but he could not turn back. He knew that the next step required confronting those who had been part of the secrets, and the thought made him nervous. Each conversation could bring answers, but it could also open old wounds. Still, he He understood that avoiding the truth would only prolong the uncertainty and the emotional unrest he had carried for weeks. The melody continued to play softly in his mind, a gentle but insistent reminder that he could not ignore what lay ahead. He decided to start with the people closest to him, those who had known the family's history but had never shared the full story. The first meeting was with his mother, in the quiet living room where he had spent countless hours as a child. He approached the conversation slowly, careful with his words. He asked about the letters, the photographs, and the melody that had led him to uncover them. At first, she hesitated, her eyes reflecting memories too heavy to speak aloud. But as he continued gently, she began to open up, revealing fragments of the past, small truths that had been hidden but were not meant to hurt him. Through their conversation, he learned about sacrifices made, decisions taken out of love and fear, and the reasons certain truths had been concealed. The melody, it turned out, had been tied to a person who had been significant in their lives, someone whose presence had left an indelible mark. The music had been a thread connecting generations, a reminder of both love and loss. As he listened, he felt a mix of relief and sorrow, understanding why the secrecy had existed, but also recognizing the impact it had on his understanding of the family, he thought. He knew. Encouraged by this conversation, he spoke with his father next. The father's approach was different. He was more reserved, cautious with words, but the underlying emotion was clear. He spoke of regrets and choices that were made to protect those they loved. Decisions that had seemed necessary at the time, but had lasting consequences. Each revelation added depth to the story, showing that the past was not simple, that life had required compromises, and that the secrets had been kept with the intention of shielding rather than harming. He realized that understanding the motives behind these secrets was crucial. It was not enough to know what had happened. He needed to grasp why it had happened. The melody played again in his mind, each note now echoing with meaning, tying the stories together, linking emotion and memory, past and present. It was as if the music itself was helping him process the complex layers of human experience, teaching him about empathy, patience, and perspective. One evening, he decided to revisit the small shop where it had all started. The shopkeeper greeted him with a knowing smile, sensing the transformation in him. He played the record again, letting the melody fill the space. This time the music felt different. It was no longer just a guide or a reminder, but a reflection of what he had learned and the emotions he had confronted. It was comforting and yet tinged with a quiet melancholy. He realized that the melody was more than a key to the past. It was a mirror of his own journey, reflecting growth, understanding, and acceptance. The process of uncovering the truth was not easy. Some conversations were tense, others emotional, and a few were filled with regret. He met relatives and friends of the family, each offering pieces of the puzzle. There were stories of courage and mistakes, moments of joy and sorrow. He listened carefully, taking in each detail, aware that the full picture was only emerging gradually. The melody played softly in his mind, guiding him, helping him process the emotions, and reminding him to approach the revelations with care and compassion. He also found himself reflecting deeply on his own life. The knowledge of the past forced him to reconsider choices he had made, the way he related to others, and the assumptions he had carried. He understood that the secrets had influenced not only his perception of his family, but also his own behavior and emotions. The journey was as much about self-discovery as it was about uncovering hidden truths. He began to see patterns in his own life that mirrored the decisions and actions of those who had come before him. As he pieced together more of the story, he discovered moments of hidden bravery and kindness that had gone unnoticed. People had made sacrifices quietly, sometimes choosing the well-being of others over their own desires. There were instances of regret and sorrow, but also of resilience and love. The melody had been present through it all, a silent witness, connecting generations and experiences in ways he had only begun to understand. One afternoon, he found a letter that had been written but never sent. It contained heartfelt words, apologies, and expressions of love and fear. Reading it, he felt the weight of emotions that had been suppressed for decades. The melody seemed to respond, soft and gentle, helping him navigate the complexity of human emotion, showing him that the past, with all its secrets, mistakes, and sacrifices, was part of a larger story that included growth and understanding. He realized that confronting the truth did not mean seeking blame or resentment. Instead, it was about understanding the reasons behind actions and embracing the lessons they offered. The melody had led him to see not only the hidden past, but also the potential for forgiveness, empathy, and reconciliation. It was a guide not just to uncovering secrets, but to processing them in a way that could bring peace and clarity as the days went on. He continued conversations, gathered stories, and reflected on what he had learned. Each interaction deepened his understanding and reshaped his perspective. The melody, ever present, was a thread weaving together memory, emotion, and truth. He felt a growing sense of acceptance, realizing that while the past could not be changed, the knowledge of it allowed him to approach the present and future with greater awareness and compassion. He began to see the interconnectedness of experiences, the way decisions ripple through lives, affecting not only the immediate family but the broader community. The secrets had shaped him, yet the revelation of them offered an opportunity to grow, to understand, and to connect more deeply with others. The melody continued to guide him, helping him navigate the emotional terrain, reminding him that the journey of discovery was as much about personal growth as it was about uncovering hidden truths. One quiet evening, he sat by the window listening to the melody in his mind. He reflected on the conversations, the letters, the photographs, and the emotions he had experienced. He felt a sense of resolution forming, a recognition that while the past was complex and filled with hidden layers, understanding it allowed for clarity and peace. The secrets had altered his perspective, but they had also offered him insight, empathy, and a deeper connection to his family and his own life. He realized that confronting the consequences of the past required courage, patience, and compassion. It was not about seeking justice or revenge, but about understanding and acceptance. The melody had guided him to this realization, helping him see the human side of every choice, every secret, and every action. It had transformed from a haunting tune to a companion, offering guidance and perspective, helping him navigate the delicate process of uncovering truth and processing emotion. By the end of Part 4, he felt a sense of preparedness for the final steps. The secrets had been revealed, the emotions confronted, and the understanding achieved. The melody remained with him, a reminder of the journey, the discoveries, and the growth he had experienced. He knew that the final stage would bring closure, clarity, and a new perspective on life. The journey was not over, but he was ready to face what lay ahead. Guided by the melody that had led him through the shadows of the past and into the light of understanding, the days after uncovering the secrets were quiet, but they were filled with reflection. The revelations had changed everything he thought he knew about his family and his own past. The melody that had started it all now played in his mind with a softer tone, no longer urgent or haunting, but gentle and comforting. It had guided him through the shadows, through the uncertainty. And now it seemed to carry a sense of completion. He spent the mornings walking through the town, noticing details he had never paid attention to. The familiar streets, the small shops, the people he had passed countless times now seemed different. Everything held stories, layers he had not seen before. The past, he realized, was not only in letters and photographs, it was in the streets, the voices, the gestures of people who had lived alongside him without him knowing their hidden stories. The melody played quietly in his mind, tying everything together, helping him see the continuity between past and present. He returned to the old shop where he had first heard the melody. The shopkeeper greeted him warmly, noticing the change in him. He played the record once more, letting the music fill the room. For the first time, he listened not with urgency or curiosity, but with understanding. He felt the emotion of the song, the echoes of the people and events that had shaped it, and he allowed himself to feel gratitude for what the melody had brought into his life. It had led him to truth, clarity, and a deeper connection to his family. The journey had also changed how he saw his parents. Their actions, once mysterious or frustrating, now made sense. He understood the motives behind their choices, the sacrifices they had made, and the love that had driven them even when they kept secrets. He felt a sense of compassion, realizing that the past was never simple. That people acted with the best intentions they had, even if the results were complicated. The melody had been a guide, helping him navigate these complex emotions, allowing him to see beyond frustration and confusion to understanding. He began to share parts of the story with close friends, those he trusted to listen without judgment. The conversations were thoughtful and quiet, filled with reflection rather than shock. He spoke of the melody, the letters, the photographs, and the hidden past. He explained how each discovery had shaped him, changed his perspective, and deepened his understanding of human emotion and connection. His friends listened carefully, offering support and empathy, helping him process the final layers of revelation and insight. As the days passed, he also reflected on his own life, the choices he had made, and the relationships he had nurtured or neglected. The knowledge of the past allowed him to see patterns, to recognize moments where he had unconsciously mirrored decisions made long ago. He realized that understanding the past was not about blame, but about learning, growing, and making conscious choices in the present. The melody, which had once seemed a mystery, now felt like a teacher. Helping him internalize the lessons of the journey, he returned to the attic one last time, where the old box had first been discovered. He opened it gently, handling the letters and photographs with care. Each item was now a piece of a completed puzzle, a fragment of a story he had finally understood. He allowed himself to linger over the memories, feeling both the weight of the past and the freedom that came from understanding. The melody played softly in his mind, a companion, a reminder, a symbol of closure. One evening he sat by the window, the sky painted with soft shades of sunset. He thought about the people whose lives had intersected with his own, about the secrets that had been kept, and the truths that had finally emerged. He felt a profound sense of peace, recognizing that while the past could not be changed, it could be understood. And that understanding allowed him to live more fully in the present. The melody, now gentle and warm, was a reflection of this peace, carrying with it the emotions of closure, gratitude, and acceptance. He decided to document the journey, writing down what he had learned, the memories that had resurfaced, and the lessons the melody had taught him. The act of writing was therapeutic, a way to process the complexity of emotions and experiences, and to ensure that the story, the history, and the truths would not be forgotten. He wanted future generations to understand, to appreciate the depth of human experience, and to recognize the importance of empathy, patience, and love. He also reached out to the distant relative who had shared some of the earlier secrets. They met again, this time with a sense of mutual understanding and calm. They spoke of the journey, the discoveries, and the impact the melody had on him. There was laughter, quiet reflection, and acknowledgement of the emotions that had been stirred. It was a moment of connection, a recognition that the past, while complicated, had led to a deeper bond and a shared understanding. The melody continued to play in his mind, not as a reminder of mystery or unanswered questions, but as a symbol of the journey itself. It was a link to the past, a reflection of the emotional growth he had experienced, and a guide for the way forward. He felt gratitude for the way it had led him, for the truths it had helped uncover, and for the clarity it had brought. It was no longer just a tune. It was a part of him, a marker of transformation. He began to engage more deeply with life, noticing the beauty and complexity in ordinary moments. Conversations with friends and family were richer, filled with empathy and understanding. He approached challenges with a new perspective, informed by the lessons of the past. The journey had changed him fundamentally, allowing him to see the interconnectedness of human experience and the importance of embracing both the joys and sorrows of life. One day, he visited the place where he had first heard the melody from the old shop. The store was still there, unchanged in many ways, but he approached it differently. He entered with a sense of gratitude and reflection, rather than curiosity or longing. The melody played faintly from the record in the corner. He felt a deep connection to the moment, recognizing the full circle of his journey. The music, the discovery, and the revelations had brought him to a place of understanding, peace, and emotional clarity. In the final moments, he reflected on the entire journey. The melody had started as a mysterious tune, pulling at memories and emotions he did not understand. It had led him to uncover secrets, confront difficult truths, and process complex emotions. Through the journey, he had gained understanding, empathy, and a sense of connection to his family and to himself. The past had shaped him, but the revelations had empowered him to live more consciously and fully. He realized that one melody had truly altered everything, not by changing events, but by opening doors to understanding, healing, and transformation. It had connected him to his past, helped him confront hidden truths, and guided him to a deeper appreciation of life, love, and human connection. As the final notes of the melody echoed in his mind, he felt a sense of completion and peace, ready to embrace the future with clarity, gratitude, and an open heart.